the other into the Russian hacking of the gas company Burisma. Both are central to the drama around President Trump's impeachment trial. Today, as senators are being sworn in as jurors in Washington, a key character is directly implicating the president himself. Lev Parnas, an aide to Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, gave an explosive interview detailing the White House's efforts to intimidate the Ukrainian president into providing dirt on Joe Biden, who's Trump's key Democratic rival.
I basically told him very strict and very stern that several things. A, that he needed to make an announcement, Zelensky needed to immediately make an announcement, literally that night or tomorrow, within the next 24 hours, that they were opening up an investigation on Biden.
You told the top official in the Zelensky inner circle that if they did not announce an investigation of the Bidens immediately and get rid of some folks around Zelensky who they believed were opposed to President Trump, that there wouldn't be any aid, and Vice President Pence would not even come to the inauguration.
Correct.
How did you have the authority to say the Vice President of the United States will not attend the inauguration if you don't do what I say?
I mean, that's what I was told to do.
Who told you to do that?
Rudy Giuliani.
Now, Parnas is currently facing criminal charges over campaign finance issues. And when I spoke to Ukraine's foreign minister here in London, he told me that he doesn't know or trust Parnas. He is here for a meeting of foreign ministers to discuss the investigation into the Ukraine airliner that was shot down last week by Iranian military. And we discussed all these international crises that Ukraine is being dragged into. Foreign Minister Prystaiko, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Mr. Foreign Minister, let me ask you the questions that everybody is talking about right now, and it is Ukraine's position, place in the ongoing domestic political drama, the impeachment case in the United States. Lev Parnas, a crony of Rudy Giuliani, who is the president's personal lawyer, has now spoken out, as you know, and he has said several things, mostly that he did carry a very explicit message from the president via Rudy Giuliani that there would need to be a quid pro quo if Ukraine was going to continue getting any kind of assistance, financial, military, political, whatever kind of assistance. And furthermore, he has now said that he is spoken to key officials within President Zelensky's circle. Since you are one of those, and you were when this happened, did you get that message from Lev Parnas?
It's all over Ukrainian media as well, today and yesterday. And strangely enough, my name was not mentioned, although I'm Minister of Foreign Affairs. And frankly, I never spoke with this individual. And again, frankly, I don't trust any word he is now saying. The assistance which he is referring to was reviewed on each and every year annually, at least twice, and half a year at the end of the year. So we knew that this assistance is to be reviewed. Sometimes it would be cut because of some political understanding of what is to be done in Ukraine. Sometimes being erased, which is now we're observing. At the end of the year, we would receive even more than it was planned. I understand that this individual, which I don't know personally, but he is now trying to save his own case. And I don't trust what he's saying. And I was so tired of these questions about our role in impeachment. What we are trying to tell Americans that we are so happy to have bilateral support from both parties, and we will be happy to have it as well. Thank you.
Let me ask you, though, because you were the head of President Zelensky's office. You have been with him since the very beginning, even before you were made foreign minister. And it's very clear that Lev Parnas and others who've testified before Congress have said that this message was passed through officials. You say that your name hasn't been mentioned public. I just want to make sure that you will never receive this kind of message, verbally or otherwise, from anybody connected with Rudolph Giuliani or representing the president.
I never met Rudy, I never met this Parnas and all other names mentioned. I believe that people are now trying to raise their political importance. I never had the chance, and frankly, we don't need these channels. Our channels of communications with Americans are well established. If some of the unofficial contacts through the advisors, that's why advisors for. We took the official formal part. We were happy with the conversation. I was at all the meetings and the conversation is a telephone on the person with President Trump, and I can tell you with all certainty that he was never mentioned that we have to do something, and President Zelensky was always telling him that whatever this message and the lesson you were teaching us all these 30 years of our independence, that it should be rule of law and should be independent judiciary and prosecutor general from the president, we finally got the message. We are not going to intervene because of some political gains. We told him, if you have information, send it through the official channels, which is Prosecutor General's office. You have your Prosecutor General, we have ours. Let them talk, cooperate. If anything to be investigated, let's investigate this.
So let me then just ask you another question, because clearly the United States had made it clear that either the president or the vice president was going to come to President Zelensky's inauguration. And this, we are told, also was mentioned by either Lev Parnas, Rudy Giuliani, or a number of people who they say were carrying message to your president. It didn't happen, as you very well know. They didn't come to the inauguration.
I can tell you why. We some blame can be on our side because we had to do it in a very fast way. President Zelensky wanted to leave the parliament free from his new presidency, and we have just a couple of days to make it legal. We've been limited by ourselves by time, so we gave quite a short notice to all the nations. And in our case, in the American case, Secretary Perry came. We believe that we would have somebody else if we want to, if we give more time for the foreign delegations. So it was not a big deal for us, at least we didn't feel it. Whatever these individuals are saying, we invited, giving just 1 week prior notice to delegations, and we received Secretary Perry, which was a good representation and good level, and I was at the conversations with Secretary Perry as well. And anything of the sort you were just referring never been mentioned in none of these conversations.
Well, I understand that you have your position, and it definitely differs from a lot of what we're hearing from the American side. But I just want to ask you in general, how important is it for Ukraine to have that demonstrable show of support, whether it's from the president, whether it's the vice president, or then a lower member of the cabinet who's actually no longer even in the cabinet, to come to you vis-a-vis your basic power struggle with Russia? How important was it for you to have the highest levels at the inauguration?
I hear the irony in your question when you ask about a formal sort of party line, which I'm trying following. But frankly, I served myself in Washington, D.C., in our embassy. I know how many of these sort of individuals, lobbyists, and everybody else trying to show how important they are, how much result they can bring, and how much message they can get over it to somebody else. Believe me, in the most of the cases, these people working for themselves rather than for the cause. And we understand that sometimes these unofficial conducts are important, but most of the cases we will stick to the support with the Congress, with the Senate, with the President's office, with State Department, which is on a great level, and we enjoy that we have this support. Again, it's never enough, and we believe that more we can have this assistance, and first of all, understanding from American government, the better. That's why we are trying to come to the visit to agreement when we see each other. And I know that this is in the pipeline for so long that people are starting to make some conclusions, but we are just expecting to have these conversations and these visits and these exchanges with President Trump.
Okay, so let's just be perfectly clear, Mr. Foreign Minister. Even the president's own ambassador to the EU, Sondland, who was tasked with the Ukrainian brief, says that there was a quid pro quo. Was there a quid pro quo as far as you know? And were you surprised when you did actually hear that that military aid was being suspended?
I know personally Ambassador Sondland, and I have to again remind you that he was political appointee. He was not on the formal side either of the State Department. He was also close to the circles which were sort of trying to get in their own business-like way. Maybe he was bringing a message, but if you read even his statement, he never talked to me, although I was the advisor and then Minister of Foreign Affairs, about any pre-POC or any unofficial channels or ways of what we can do to get closer to President Trump. No, he was talking to some people who believed was instrumental at that time. I personally see that we are okay with the support we have right now, and we don't need, sorry to be blunt, and we don't need this unofficial support. It's not on the level, at the level when we have with the Americans already. We can have the support, and if we are told that the assistance, military assistance, can be affected by some lack of reform. This is a normal conversation we had with Americans so many times before. And during this particular year you're describing right now, we had a couple of times to explain to members of Congress that we understand that the system is not coming from the sky. It is connected to some reforms we have to do, to changes, and we were doing. So it was not about political gains on any side. We heard this assistance is important to us. We told them that it is important, and it is connected to some reforms which we were doing.
Mr. Foreign Minister, your brief, obviously, as Foreign Minister, is about protecting foreign diplomats as well, respecting foreign diplomats. I believe this might have happened before you became Foreign Minister, but nonetheless, I need to ask you about the concerns of the former U.S. Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch and what has since transpired over the last 24 hours in these texts and other things that have been released in the United States by Lev Parnas and his cronies and others to Congress, no less. This is material that is being delivered to the U.S. Congress in the case of an impeachment trial in the Senate of the United States. And one of these says, it's about Yovanovitch, and they say they're moving her tomorrow. She's talked to 3 people. Her phone is off. Computer is off. She's next to the embassy. Not in the embassy. Private security. Been there since Thursday. Look, it's pretty cryptic, but they are suggesting that somehow she is being moved around because of threats or other such issues in Ukraine, in Kiev, to her. Do you know anything about that?
No, and I know Yovanovitch very well. I remember her. I was part of Foreign Service professionally. I remember her when she was on the previous tenure as the Deputy Chief of the Mission. She's a very good, refined diplomat who was instrumental for both Ukraine and the United States for our cooperation. I hope that this is some mistake. She was never having any troubles or threats in Ukraine. I would have to read what you were just referring, but I hope that the information is not correct. We appreciated the level of cooperation with her, by the way, with each and every ambassador. Another person which was sent to substitute her was Bill Taylor, used to be ambassador to Ukraine before. So we have this, number of people working with us for many years, bringing to Ukraine to all the expertise we needed, assistance we needed, and we do appreciate each and every high-level American diplomat working for both American interests and Ukrainian as well.
So you must have been personally quite, I don't know, chagrined, offended, sad when you saw this professional diplomat, Marie Yovanovitch, being trashed by the administration.
As a professional courtesy, we believe that diplomats were serving their nations and their political elite for such long time that their services at least should be recognized. As a professional myself, I hope they'll be treated differently in Ukraine.
Another part of this email basically says, or text, they're willing to help if you would like a price. Guess you can do anything in the Ukraine with money. Again, they're suggesting that they've got this surveillance of her and that they can do it in Ukraine because of bribes or payoffs or whatever.
And when you refer to they, you mean who? Americans?
No, this guy Parnas and Robert Hyde, the conversation between them.
Never had the privilege to talk to these individuals, and I hope they will never have it in my life. And I don't believe that what they're saying is true. Again, what I believe they are trying to do is just to raise in the political awareness, political importance of them to escape some persecution in the United States. We do not need such individuals to get in the way of our cooperation with any state, is it the United States or United Kingdom.
I want to know about Burisma and the hacking event that was discovered and reported this week. Apparently, again, the Russian GRU is being accused and labeled of hacking this very company that is at the center of all this, your energy company that Hunter Biden was a board member of. And again, this is all about allegedly finding dirt on President Trump's biggest rival so far. What do you make of that? And do you feel that your vital infrastructure is actually safe from any kind of interference like this, cyber interference and the like?
Why I'm not surprised that Russians hacked in the system of any company in Ukraine. As a Minister of Foreign Affairs, I know how many times my own system been tried and how many attempts, successful and non-successful, to breach our security system, not just Foreign Affairs, but all our missions abroad. We unfortunately accumulated so much knowledge of the cyber attacks against us. We're sharing this information within NATO or with all our partners. We have the people coming from all the parts of the globe trying to learn from our experience. I just returned from Singapore, when mostly we were talking about cyber and hybrid threats posed by specific nations right now around the world. And I'm not surprised at all. I remember the first conversations of how the Burisma already took in the sort of stage that the President Trump was told again by Russians that it was something about Burisma and Biden's son. But I have to tell you that on this particular company, so many foreign nationals, you can see through the list of the directors or board of directors, and you'll see that this company is consisted of very, very famous individuals who came as one of the biggest foreign company which is operating right now in Ukraine. So it's not just son of President Biden who was a part of this company.
Were you, the government, aware of this hack before it was published by the New York Times?
Not, at least not me as a foreign minister, no.
You're obviously here to discuss with fellow foreign ministers the tragedy, the mistaken shoot-down of the Ukrainian airline by the Iranians. Can I first ask you, you lost 11 Ukrainians, there are also other nationalities, and the majority of the victims were Iranian and Canadian. Do you accept that it was a mistake? Are you all starting from that principle?
First of all, let me tell you that we are bringing the condolences to everybody perished, including British citizens. And we at least have this now recognition, which we didn't, by the way, receive from the very first days. I had a talk with Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iran the first day, and he never mentioned that the plane was shot down by the rocket. Now at least we have this peace, which is bringing some peace to the families of the perished ones. So we are starting as the grieving nations, this coalition of the nations from this point, and we hope that we will be able to bring to the criminal accountability of those perpetrators of this crime. And we are not just talking about some poor soldier who pushed the button. We made it clear when the President Zelensky talked to President Rouhani that we want to know who gave the order, the whole link. We have to find out who is responsible for the deaths of our people, and we will talk about it today, and we will hopefully be able, as a collective body, to talk to Iranians and press them in the right direction.
So are you now getting the cooperation you want from the Iranian authorities, the president, the foreign minister, the military authorities? Is your message getting through?
We understand that our message and the message of international community coming through, and that's what's made the Iranians to cooperate. I can tell you that we have good cooperation right now. On a practical level, people working throughout the day, 24 hours a day, the technicians, the experts on both sides. We have our team, big team working. We have now Canadians joined our effort. The site is cleared, which we had a problem. We now have access to everything we needed. We managed to identify bodies, at least the Ukrainians, and we are ready to repatriate. By the way, we are offering our assistance for other nations for repatriation. What we're missing, last piece in this equation, is the access to the information stored in black boxes. We've been told by Iranians that we will be able to repatriate the boxes. Now this discussion raised from I don't know where that it can be still done in Iranian territory. It's not a big deal where it will be done. We just want to know that nobody is tampering with the recordings themselves, and we have right expertise on the hands when it's done.
Mm-hmm. So when you say right expertise on hand, you mean Ukrainian officials? You want your Ukrainian officials or other internationals to be there when this black box is investigated, when the boxes are decoded?
Right. But the perfect is to have these boxes themselves physically on Ukrainian territory, because we lost the plane. We have this right to investigate. Then we will be able to have every expert. If it is not something we can achieve with Iranians, we will ask our colleagues and friends who have the expertise to come with us to be sure that what we are reading from direct boxes is actually the actual needed information.
Are you still getting resistance from Iran after all that's happened and after the immense amount of pressure that Iran is now under internationally?
Besides this unsettled business with black boxes, so far we are having the expertise given by Iranians and the support on different levels. I know the Iranians are planning an official visit to Ukraine, to come even to Ukraine with apologies. What we were hearing with the president is allowing us to go ahead with the Iranian president. Mm-hmm. So what we don't want is to be caught in sort of internal political Iranian dynamics. We see some things going on. You can see the people on the streets. There are differences in the government. We want to go through this. We want the justice to be brought, and then they will deal with whatever they have the problems, the political implications on the ground themselves.
I want to ask you one last political question, though, about Iran, and that is, as you can see, the Trump administration is putting a huge amount of pressure on the so-called E3, the European nations who joined the Iran nuclear deal, and others who have signed up to it. What do you make of the so-called collateral damage if a nuclear agreement is destroyed that you all signed on to, the UN signed on to, the Europeans and previously the Americans as well?
Don't forget that we is the nation which gave up third biggest arsenal, which was bigger than the French and Chinese together. So if anybody is pushing more for the deal, so that the place, that our land, the whole globe will be more secure than Ukrainians. We don't want this agreement to suffer because of any political implications, any bilateral relations. We believe that this is the right way to go, and we support the effort of international community of how to make the Iranians to drop this idea of becoming yet another nuclear state.
Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Major issues.